Sotomayor. Well, the death of a child at a daycare has some Kansas parents pushing for stricter regulations. Kris Ketz has more in this edition of This Week in Kansas City.
Good Sunday morning, everybody. Well, it has happened again. So far this year, 5 children have died in Kansas child care centers. The most recent this past week, an 18-month-old in Olathe. Now a call to change state law, which governs child care centers. We welcome back Kansas State Senator Lynn, Republican of Olathe, head of the Senate's Children's Issues Committee, and a supporter of Lexi's law, which would require child care providers to be within sight and sound of the kids they're watching. Senator, it's good to have you here.
Nice to be here.
Well, you hear about a story like this past week in Johnson County, and you think what?
I think what a tragedy that it takes something like this to finally get legs on an issue that we haven't addressed for 20 years in our state statutes.
And this is a law, again, as you say, which hasn't been changed in 20 years. How did that happen?
I think that there was just, the issue did not have legs, and I think that it was an issue that nobody was willing to take on. And unfortunately, this has happened, and it's happened in Johnson County. It's happened right in my district. I happen to be chair of the committee, and it's time to change it.
The National Child Care Association ranks the state of Kansas 47th in regulating child care centers. 47th.
Well, and this is surprising considering the billions of dollars that we put into children in this state, with education funding, with our caseloads, with foster care, and with our children's initiatives. I'm surprised by that, and it just shows that this little piece is what's missing in Kansas, and I think if we can change this, we can really put Kansas on the map as a leader for kids.
Tell us about Lexi's law.
Well, basically what it would do is it's something very simple, just change a little language. Right now the language is that a provider should be within sight or sound. And now it needs to be changed to within the line of sight or sound. So it's very, very simple change, but as you know, sometimes the more simple the change is, sometimes the more complex it can become.
Well, are there any sort of forces that would work in opposition to this?
Well, I think really the only opposition would come from maybe groups who think that we're trying to over-regulate an industry, and that's not our intent at all with this. We don't want to over-regulate any industry in Kansas and make it hard for them to operate. This is about our kids. This is a safety issue, and this is something that can be easily changed and easily implemented.
And this is also something, too, as a legislator, you have to wrestle regulations when it comes to home child care centers, which is what obviously involved the situation with the 18-month-old this past week, and those centers which are part of big companies.
Well, and I think what we're trying to do here is just raise the bar in terms of the quality standards that we have in Kansas across the board that would include all of the home care providers and corporate providers. Many of the corporate providers already have very strict standards in place.
They're not the problem?
No. This is really the problem within the home care providers and what we call pop-up providers who don't register or don't get licensed. They just pop up a shingle and they start watching kids. And so this would hopefully strengthen the regulations and really in that process raise the quality of care, raise the professionalism of the industry.
And it's not just a problem in Kansas, but it's a problem in states everywhere. How do you keep track of those home health care situations?
Well, in fact, the advocacy group that I've been working with has done a tremendous job in surveying all the different states and the language that they have in place. And Lexi's law right now is being written, and I told this group, come up with what you think the language should be. We'll run it by our legislative researchers, and let's put together the best, most comprehensive piece of legislation that we can so that this tragedy does not happen again.
And when it comes to inspections, is there anything in this law that would increase the number of inspections of these home health care providers?
We're looking at that. And if some of the opposition might come from groups that say if we increase inspections, that increases costs on the part of the state. But we have to remember, these are our children. And parents who select home daycare or corporate daycare, they do that with a sense of I am leaving my child with you, I trust that my child is going to be safe, and especially if they leave them with a home provider that is licensed or registered with the state of Kansas, they believe that their child is going to be safe. Unfortunately, that's not always the case. Lexi's Law would help strengthen that.
Does the state have the resources to increase inspections of these home health care providers?
That would be something that would be figured out during the legislative process, and with budgets the way they are right now, let's just say I think it'll be a big fight, but I think it's something that we can get done.
It is certainly